Good evening and welcome to CYC News for the 24th of April 2016 and the 16th of Baramuda 17:32 am. I'm David Nada. In today's headlines, the French president visits the Coptic Museum in Cairo, Egypt. The establishment of a new Coptic service in Uganda. Trump returns to the Lyin Ted nickname for rival senator. White House threatens to veto the 9/11 lawsuit bill. 9 Guantanamo detainees are transferred to Saudi Arabia. And Rio 2016, the Olympic torch is set to leave Olympia in Greece for Brazil. On Monday, April 18, the French President François Hollande visited the Coptic Museum in Cairo during his visit to Egypt. He was received by His Grace Bishop Daniel, Bishop of Maadi Diocese, and His Bishop Euelios, General Bishop of Old Cairo Churches, that were delegated by His Holiness Pope Tewodros II. President Hollande expressed his appreciation to the great history of Copts and the distinguishing role that the Coptic Church has. At the end of the visit, he thanked the Church for the great welcoming as he was presented by a souvenir sent by His Holiness Pope Tewodros II. On Thursday, April 21st, Hegumen Philobos at Samuili was delegated by His Grace Bishop Antonios Moros, General Bishop of Africa Affairs, to Kampala in Uganda. He spent a huge time with the Coptic people, who amount to more than 30, and he prayed many liturgies with them during Lent and took confessions. This is a huge step for Kampala and Uganda. His Grace Bishop Antonios Moros has said that the General Diocese of Africa Affairs is making serious steps towards the establishment of a permanent Coptic church in this area. On Tuesday, April 19th, His Grace Bishop Gabriel, Bishop of Austria, received the key of the Church of St. Mary and Archangel Michael in Vienna. This church was actually presented by the Catholic Church as a gift for the Coptic Church. It's an ancient church which dates back to 1970. It was well known as the Church of the Victorious Virgin and its touristic monument in Australian capital. His Grace Bishop Gabriel prayed the Thanksgiving prayer after receiving the church and led the glorification hymns for both St. Mary and the Archangel Michael, whom the church is named after. Over to the presidential American elections, where Donald Trump is back to denouncing Lyin Ted, the Republican presidential frontrunner, who had softened his attacks on his chief rival, Texas Senator Ted Cruz, on Tuesday night in New York City following his crushing primary victory in the Empire State. He dropped his usual nickname for Cruz and in Indianapolis adopted the new phrase, Lyin Ted. Again, less than 3 minutes into his speech, Trump was blasting Cruz and repeating, Lyin Ted. Later in the speech, Trump told the crowd, "I'm about 300 delegates ahead of Lyin Ted," arguing that Cruz is attempting to claim the Republican nomination through a rigged, crooked system that is designed so that the bosses can pick whoever they want. Trump's nicknames for foes have been props in his campaign and debates for months. First, he denounced former Florida Governor Jeb Bush as low energy, and then he branded Florida Senator Marco Rubio as Little Marco. His latest target is Hillary Clinton, who Trump is calling Crooked Hillary. His nickname for the Democratic presidential frontrunner made an extended appearance during remarks Trump gave at a rally in Berlin, Maryland. Vice President Joe Biden criticized Israel's government and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday morning, warning that the current direction Israel is headed in leaves little room for Middle East peace efforts and is causing overwhelming frustration. "We have an overwhelming obligation, notwithstanding our sometimes overwhelming frustration with the Israeli government. We have an obligation to push them as hard as we can toward what they know in their gut is the only solution, a two-state solution," Biden said in remarks on Monday night to J Street, a liberal pro-Israeli lobby. Biden's comments on Netanyahu were particularly harsh. The Obama administration has long had rancorous relationships with the Israeli Prime Minister. Biden added, "The present course Israel is on is not one that is likely to secure its existence as a Jewish democratic state, and we have to make sure that happens." In Washington, a bipartisan bill to let families victimized by 9/11 terrorist attacks sue Saudi Arabia ran into sharp setbacks on Monday, as the White House threatened a veto and a GOP senator privately sought to block the measure. The move comes as presidential candidates from both parties are seizing on the legislation to score points with New York voters ahead of Tuesday's critical primary there. And it has ditched the likely next Senate Democratic leader, Chuck Schumer of New York, squarely against Obama. The White House and State Department are bluntly warning lawmakers not to proceed with the legislation over fears it could have dramatic ramifications for the United States and citizens living abroad to revenge lawsuits. The president lands in Riyadh on Wednesday for talks with all of the Saudi Arabia of ISIS and Iran at a time of strained relations between the countries, making the bill's timing that much more sensitive. US Secretary of Defense Ash Carter announced on Monday that the United States will send 217 additional troops to Iraq to serve as advisors and trainers. They will also offer aviation support and provide force protection during the unannounced visit to Iraq. The US will additionally provide Army Apache attack helicopters, something the US had been pushing for months in the face of resistance from the Iraqi government. The new forces, which will raise the US troop presence in Iraq to more than 4,000, will be allowed to advise at the battalion and brigade level, rather than be restricted to division level. This means that they are closer to the front lines and at greater risk. The Pentagon announced on Saturday that the United States is transferring 9 detainees from the detention facility at Guantanamo Bay to Saudi Arabia. The transfer, which brings the number of prisoners remaining at Guantanamo Bay to 80, comes amid President Barack Obama's renewed effort to close the prison, one of the earliest pledges of his presidency. It also comes ahead of Obama's planned trip to Saudi Arabia next week. The Defense Department expressed gratitude to the Kingdom in a statement on Saturday. The United States is grateful to the government of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for its humanitarian gesture and willingness to support ongoing US efforts to close the Guantanamo Bay detention facility. The statement said Obama signed an executive order in the first week of his presidency to close the controversial prison, marking a decisive break from his predecessor George W. Bush. But Obama has yet to deliver on that promise, as many Republicans and some Democrats have long been wary of closing the facility and having to transfer remaining inmates. In February, Obama detailed his plan to Congress to close the prison. The blueprint involves transferring the bulk of remaining detainees to other countries and moving the rest to an as yet undetermined detention facility in the United States. These remaining prisoners can't be transferred abroad because they're deemed too dangerous. A major concern of lawmakers has been the risk that released detainees will return to the battlefield. And to our final news story, a tale that belongs to the legend of Prometheus, the Titan who stole fire from the mighty Zeus and passed it on as a gift to the human race. The adventure of Prometheus would inspire one of the most iconic fires in the world, the Olympic flame. On Thursday, the torch for the 2016 Games in Rio de Janeiro will be lit using the rays of sun and a concave mirror in ancient Olympia, the birthplace of the Games. The ceremony is led by a high priestess who prays to the ancient gods Apollo and Zeus while lighting the torch. Once lit, she takes the flame in a small ceramic bowl and leads a procession towards the Pantheonic Stadium, briefly stopping to observe the custom of cutting a branch from an olive tree, a symbol of peace. When the high priestess arrives into the stadium, she then lights the torch of the first runner to signal the start of the relay. According to historic documents, the first ancient games took place in 776 BC and continued for 12 centuries. But it was not until 1936 that the modern Olympics began to use the Olympic flame, which had been lit amidst the ruins of Olympia. The torch will be handed over to the organisers of the Rio Games on April 27 after a tour around Greece. From there on it will embark on a 95-day tour of Brazil, visiting 83 cities and 26 state capitals and 500 towns. And that's all for CYC News. A reminder that you can watch this news bulletin again throughout the week on YouTube. I'm David Nada, and from the CYC studios in Sydney, Australia, good night and God bless.